What's going on, folks? I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week, we're going over UFC Vegas 31, headlined by Islam Makhachev, going up against Thiago Moises in a pivotal lightweight scrap. Obviously, it's very important for Makhachev to go out there and take any fights in terms of anybody that's willing to fight this guy so that he can continue to send up the ranks and eventually get a title shot, especially now that his brethren, Khabib Nurmagomedov, has chosen to retire. And now that lightweight division is ripe for the pickings in terms of allowing him to go out there and try to get that lightweight strap. So I'm very much excited for this fight. Thiago Moises matches up to him in a very interesting manner in this fight. So I'm looking forward to breaking that down for you guys. But there are a couple other very intriguing spots on this card. Now, a couple other things I do want to say right off the bat here. It's a very parlay heavy card, let's be honest, right? There's a ton of heavy favorites in here that should be able to go out there and do their thing, but you want to be very careful in terms of which ones you're selecting and which ones might be, a little bit too much of a sweat or will possibly go out there and actually end up losing. So very interested to see what some people's thoughts are on this as we start to go down the card. So shout out to everybody that's already hopped on and on the live stream. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe as well if you guys are enjoying what you guys are seeing here. But let's not waste too much more time. So let's just get into the episode here. As a reminder, the pre-recorded version of the show will be going up later tonight. So you guys can keep your eyes out for that if you guys want to hear a little bit more thoughts from my end in terms of some of these fights. But my predictions are pretty much going to be all the same. I will also be putting up the best bets and props article on my Patreon page as well for this entire card, going through every single fight, giving my best straight or over under, as well as my favorite prop as well on the card. So I'm very much looking forward to doing that. And in terms of Bellator, I know Bellator is tomorrow as well. I probably won't be doing a live stream for that, but I will maybe have a lock of the night play for it. Surprise, surprise, it's more than likely going to be a parlay, but there are at least 3 spots on that card that I'm very much looking at and do believe that they are worth the chalk. So just want to do a little bit more combing through them first before I actually drop that. But just before I hopping on this live stream, I did drop my lock of the night play and dog of the night play for the UFC card this weekend. As you guys know, it will be free on Friday. So tomorrow evening, I will unveil it at the ending of the Ultimate Weigh-In show. And then I'll post it to my social medias, Instagram, Twitter, all that type of shit. So yeah. All right, let's not waste too much more time. Let's just see what the chat is saying real quick, and then we get up on out of here. Not out of here, but into the fucking podcast. Daddy Lopez asking what happened to propping you up. There's nothing wrong with it at the moment. We should be doing a show later this evening, but I will let you guys know what's up. Marley is saying Makhachev is a lock. Yeah, but I'm not playing a minus 700 straight. James Beck, I did see you actually going out there and trying to see if what that other dude spewing about me is true or not. I'm glad that he thinks that you're that you're a troll account of mine. So that should just go further to show what type of shit that guy is going through. In terms of that situation, not a big fan of guys creating troll accounts or other accounts to kind of just game the algorithm. I understand what he's doing. Lost a little respect for the guy, I will be honest, but it's still my guy. I mean, I can't completely throw him away or anything like that. He's accepted his wrongdoing. That's the most we can do. All right. Jared saying, is Clint's dad? No, Clint's my boy. Don't even say that. Clint is my boy. I can't wait. I do believe we have a show scheduled in the next coming weeks, so look out for that. All right. Let's get into this. First and foremost, we always go through the betting recap as always. I got a little bit too overzealous last time around. I knew it was a big card. There were 2 spots that I was very confident in, which I made my lock of the night play. Initially, my only lock of the night play was Max Griffin, 5 units at minus 190. That definitely comes through plus 263. 2.63. I found it very interesting that he went out there and implemented a calf kicking and leg kicking heavy game plan, and then just decide to just completely forget about it in the second and third rounds. And then in the third round, he goes out there and wrestles at the end of it to secure that round. So at least he gets a dub, a little bit more of a sweat than I'd like, especially considering how much of a grappling advantage I expected him to have. And luckily, that grappling advantage does come in handy at the ending of that third round to secure that third round. So we get the dub there. So plus 2.63 units there. And then the rest of the night was a little bit, well, dog shit. My other lock that I played, Wonderboy Thompson, -5 units there. I had him at -149. Yeah, it was 1-1 going into that third round, and he just could not stop those takedown attempts for Gilbert Burns. So that's a little bit of an eye opener in terms of the takedown defense percentage that Thompson had going into this fight, and the lack of guys that were actually trying to take him down in his last several fights. Thompson was able to come out on top in most of his past fights because they're willing to go out there and fight his type of fight. But Gilbert Burns didn't want to do that, nor did he give a fuck about the boos that were raining down, which is why he was able to go out there and get the dub over Wonderboy Thompson. So shout out to anybody that was actually on Gilbert Burns that night. And then the two dog plays. I like the value that I got out of Jessica Eye at +165. She was pushing forward. She was making the fight close. I felt it was just, pockets of damage versus volume output and cage control of Jessica Eye. And, some people might think it was much more of a lopsided fight than others, but I thought it was a closer fight than what first and foremost than the odds indicated. And Jessica Eye went out there and did exactly what I wanted her to do: keep moving forward, throw combinations, and just fight for your money. And I fully believe that she was fighting for my money. So -1 unit on that, +165 there. And then Yana Kunitskaya, obviously a public favorite dog. She went from a +155 dog. I ended up betting her at +100 because I still felt she had a little bit of value there in terms of being able to secure takedowns. But Elena Donna, misses weight. I'm not going to say that's the reason that she ended up winning the fight, but she still goes out there and puts an ass whooping on Yana Kunitskaya, and Kunitskaya comes out on the losing end there. And all in all, we end up -4.87 units on the night. Tough outing there, but I know, I got a little bit overzealous in terms of the lock of the night plays there. If I just stuck with my guns, went with the original lock of the night dog night, which was Griffin, that cashes, and then Jessica Eye, that fails, we still would have ended up in a slight profit, which is my goal at the end of the day. So I got to definitely learn my lesson from that and move on forward. Let's see what the chat is saying before I move on here. Mbaye is saying, is there any value in parlaying Islam? It depends on how you look at the fight. I think he wins, and depending on the type of parlay that you're putting together, possibly. I think him winning by decision, which is obviously what I'm going to get to, I think that's the best spot in terms of taking him there. But if you're just putting together Hail Mary parlays and tickets like that, I don't mind that -700, -600 that's on him. George Magstopoulos saying, I think Griffin threw too much for his cardio levels and decided to give up the second round so that he can come on top in the third. I could see that too. I just wish that even though he was like kind of reserving his cardio, at least throw the leg kicks out there a little bit more, right? Just as he was in that first round. You don't have to fully commit to it, but just throw them out there. Even if you still end up losing that round, at least you accumulate the damage on Condit's legs to kind of slow him down even more for yourself in that third round to make it a little bit easier, but is what it is. Lajuan saying, I initially had Gilbert, but watched a ton of shows and no one was really picking him, so changed my mind. Yeah, that's one thing that you really got to learn in this game, especially if you want to become a handicapper, tipster, or whatever the fuck it is. When you make your reads, be confident in it. Like, run the tape, cancel out the outside noise, run the tape, trust in your reads, and then if you feel like you got burns, stick with your guns. Clint is saying, I think that eye decision might go the other way if she wasn't bleeding all over the place from the up. I absolutely agree. Well, then again, I think two judges gave it a 30-27. I could be off on that, but I do think that inverted headbutt and bleeding definitely swayed the judges a little bit. Waleed Raid saying, just guy one, in my opinion. David Dean saying, talk me out of max betting Gamrot. I'll definitely be getting there very soon. Ben Peak saying, my friend who didn't bet it thought just guy won. That fight tells you how good that bet was. Sucks we lost. Yeah. Again, there is decent value in losing bets. Like you got to go back and look at yourself and see other spots where you tried to take advantage of a plus 150 to plus 175 underdog and see how you're coming out on top. At least that gives you an idea of, okay, I am seeing these underdogs and I am getting value out of them. And, I might not hit them at a higher rate than I'm hitting or losing. But at the end of the day, with the unit sizing, with the odds, you should still come out on top if you're picking the correct underdogs, even if they end up coming out losing a couple times. John Hess saying I and Price should have won. I thought Pareto won that 2-1. You could make an argument for a 10 in that third round for Price, but I thought Pareto won at least the first and second round. George Manixopoulos saying I had Maya getting the dub, landed the more impactful strikes, but betting wise, the value was definitely on I. Good dog bet. Yeah. Bitkidon saying I told you Aldana was live for that KO. Yeah, for sure. She has the power, man. Mohammed Boston saying Wonder Boy let us down bad. Yeah, for sure. Exactly. I'll get a couple more of these, and then I'm gonna get on with the show here. Lock, what's your thoughts on my parlay? I got one you on Islam, Gamrot, Morozov, Rodriguez, Johns paying out 830. I like them all except one of them. So just stick around for the show and I'll let you know the predictions as they go on. It's saying still wondering where all my money went. Yeah, that's fucked. Trust me. I think I would have been up at least 11K that night. Blackie Chan saying house on tie paid off. All right, that's really about it. Yeah, about better saying I cannot continue to justify my losses based on the value of the fight. Yeah, exactly. If all you're doing is losing, though, then yeah, you already know what the deal is. You got to figure out a better way to go out there and get those dubs. I'm gonna in the next maybe week or two, I'm gonna go over my my record and see what those spots are paying out, like the plus 150s to plus 200s or the plus 200s to plus 250s. I want to see how well I'm actually picking out those spots and how they're coming out. All right, let's move on with the show here. First and foremost, we got Rodrigo Nascimento going up against Alain Baudot. Let me just wet the whistle real quick. So minus 350 on Nascimento, plus 290 on Baudot. Easily a striker versus grappler matchup here. You guys already know how it is here. Nascimento wants to get this fight to the ground. Baudot wants to keep the fight on the feet, trying to knock him out. I do think, unfortunately, though, that Baudot, he should be a light heavyweight, maybe even a middleweight. He did fight at light heavyweight before coming to the UFC, where he ended up taking a loss, at least in his last fight before coming to the UFC. He fought a guy named Todd Stout that used to train or still trains at the gym that I used to work at. And all he is about, more often than not, is striking, trying to knock your head off. That's Todd Stout's game plan. But Todd went out there and did a really good job in terms of nullifying Baudot and his striking by pushing him up against the cage, dragging him to the ground every now and then. And then eventually he had a very close arm triangle choke at the ending of the second round. And then eventually finds that rear naked choke at the ending of the third round and gets the finish there. It seems like it's a little bit too easy to take Baudot down, which leads me to believe that Nascimento will have a lot of success in terms of taking Baudot down in this fight. It seems like he doesn't really do well in terms of like digging for underhooks and pivoting off and going for the wizard or anything like that. I think he really struggles in terms of dealing with guys that really want to get him to the ground. And I think Nascimento is going to have a clear size and strength advantage in this fight that he can just kind of bull rush for it. His striking it could use improvement. Don't get me wrong. I think Baudot has the slightly better striking in this fight, but I don't think it's to the point where it's like Nascimento needs to worry about getting knocked out here. I think he can just wing forward with certain shots that he has, similar to what he did against Don Telmays, similar to what he was able to do into his past fights as well, especially on the Contender Series, and then eventually find Baudot up against the cage, drag this fight to the ground, and then it's just going to be all his world. I truly believe it's only going to take Nascimento one takedown to find the finish in this fight. I think that Baudot really struggles off of his back, is easy to pass his guard, and then I think that Nascimento will either land a arm triangle choke, or if Baudot, turns to his back, I think that Nascimento will take that back and snatch it up too. Now, a lot of people are a little bit skeptical about Nascimento because he got knocked out by Chris Daukaus in his last fight. I am telling you guys right now, Daukaus and Baudot are on completely different levels of striking. Now, Baudot might have a longer career and a longer resume in terms of kickboxing and Muay Thai and stuff, but he doesn't present the same amount of speed and precision that Chris Daukaus was able to showcase, especially in his last couple fights, right? Daukaus goes out there and fights guys that want to take him to the ground. He keeps the fight on the feet and lands those significant strikes and eventually knocks these guys out. Baudot, on the other hand, I find it a little bit difficult that he's actually going to find success with his hands here against the much bigger Nascimento. And even if he does, the spot that I like in this fight the most, the under 1.5, -145. Now, it might seem a little bit amateurish just to take the under 1.5 in a heavyweight, somewhat slop fest. Both these guys are probably middle to lower level guys in the UFC in this heavyweight division. But I feel like the clear advantage that Nascimento has in the strike or in the grappling realm and the ease in which he should be able to land takedowns here should allow him to get that quick submission victory in this fight against Alan Baudot. So I love Nascimento round one, Nascimento round one submission. Even the under 1.5 fight doesn't start round two, I think is a decent spot as well. But I do like Nascimento going out there and continuously well, not continuously. He'll land one takedown, and then he'll have his way eventually finding that submission, before that first round ends. So I do like Nascimento here, but the spot that I like the most is definitely on the under 1.5 around that -145 range. Last thing I'll throw out about this fight, I believe 8 out of 9 of Nascimento's fights have finished under 1.5. And then 7 out of the 10 fights for Alan Baudot has finished under 1.5. But I believe the majority of, excuse me, sorry. But I do believe every single one of Baudot's fights have finished inside the distance. So I'm expecting violence here. I'd rather take the under 1.5, but Nascimento's not too bad of a parlay spot either, as I do believe that one takedown will be all he needs to win this fight. All right, let's see what the chat is saying. Olajuwon saying, can we do parlays in Canada? Of course we can. Depending on which bookies you use, there's so many. I have Coolbet, again, coolbet.com, promo code MMALOTN2. They'll match your initial deposit up to $200. But yeah, they allow you parlay props, parlay anything. I like it. The African saying Nascimento round one seems like the likely play. Yep. African saying if Baudot hits the mat, the fight is done. I agree. And this is the big part here. He is undersized. He is normally a light heavyweight. And he's just been blown up to heavyweight. Doesn't seem like he's made the transition properly either, which leads me to believe that Nascimento should ground this fight without much issue. Bob Bear saying, no value Nascimento by sub at +100. Personally, I'd rather take the inside the distance in case he decides to, if he gets his back and he doesn't find the neck and just decides to ground and pound him. But I think he's going to have absolute just success for days once this fight hits the ground. Again, I know you guys are talking about other fights. I'm only going to be talking about the fight that I'm currently on. So don't expect me to answer any questions about the Gamrot fight yet until I actually get to that fight. Mike Lowry is saying, I believe if you're with TD banks or RBC, they don't allow you to gamble on sites. That is incorrect. I do have a TD card, like a Visa debit card. And when I've had to make deposits, and some of these websites are actually allowing you to do e-transfer deposits now, they've allowed me to. There's actually there's no issue with that anymore. There used to be, you are correct, there used to be, at least for TD, but not anymore. But they're saying Nascimento submission focused. Absolutely. John West saying thoughts on Baudot KO +500. That's the only way he wins. I mean, so if you do think that he has success in terms of getting that knockout, then go for it. But I do think that if you're just taking it from the fact that Daukaus knocked out Nascimento, I think that's not the best way to look at it. Like Daukaus, much faster hands, much better combinations. Baudot a little bit more wild and a little bit slower. He should be able to land on Nascimento, but I don't think he's going to be able to land with the speed and accuracy that Daukaus is going to. I think if he does commit to anything, Nascimento is going to change levels, land the takedown, and then it's going to be all his world. But if Baudot wins, KO is the only way. Plus 500, not bad. Talav is saying Baudot trains with Saragon. If he trains with him all the time, then he might beat Nascimento. I don't think that's going to translate here. Nigel Lee is saying I'm staying off these heavyweight bums. All right. Seems like we've pretty much answered all of it here. HSB asking, do you have a martial arts background? I've boxed, no fights, amateur fights or anything like that. I've boxed, but I've worked at an MMA gym. I've cornered guys in the past. I've done more than enough in the MMA realm. I do want to get back into boxing though. I have a boxing bag in my garage, but I do want to go back to that boxing gym that I used to train at and work at. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. I believe I want to make sure I get the order of this correct. So yeah, next up we got Francisco Figueiredo going up against my fellow Canadian brethren, Malcolm Gordon. Not the greatest run for Malcolm Gordon thus far in the UFC. 0-2 now. Amir Albazi and Sumadarji going out there and starching him relatively quickly. And it's really not the Malcolm Gordon I expected to see when he came to the UFC. His last win before coming to the UFC was against Yanni Sherbatov. And even though a lot of people, you kind of know Sherbatov from his time on The Ultimate Fighter, he was on that season where they're all competing to see who fights Demetrius Johnson. He ended up losing to who did he lose to on the thing there? Yeah, he lost to Eric Shelton, got submitted in that. But up until that point, nobody wanted to fight Yanni Sherbatov in Canada. Absolutely nobody. It was very difficult for Yanni Sherbatov to find any willing takers. But after he lost on the Ultimate Fighter season, then he came back and people were more willing to fight him. He goes out there and he gets armbarred, and then he loses to Malcolm Gordon in his last fight. Malcolm Gordon, seemed like he was on the brink of defeat in that Sherbatov fight. Sherbatov was having a lot of success in terms of landing on him, hurt him, but Gordon did a good job in terms of recouping, managing to get his wits up about him, landing a takedown on Sherbatov, and then eventually finding a rear naked choke, as we do know that Malcolm Gordon has a black belt in his back pocket in case he needs it. But what we've seen inside the UFC hasn't really shown us that he, is next level or anything like that. The Amir Albazi fight, Albazi having a lot of success on the feet, and then eventually landing a takedown and landing some big shots from the top. And then Gordon seemingly pulls off a reversal at the end of that round. But in that time, Amir Albazi does a good job in terms of clearing the shoulder and then locking up that triangle choke and eventually getting that finish. And then in the next side, Mudarji, any strike that he lands on Gordon wilts and he falls. Now, Figueiredo, on the other hand, I do think he wins this fight. Don't get me wrong. My issue with him, though, is the fact that we don't have too much tape available. Now, on the tape index, we only have the 2 fights, right? His second last fight against Eduardo Souza, and then his last fight against Jerome Rivera. But there's a ton of spots in those fights where it's just like he's a pot shotter, right? Like he goes out there, he doesn't really throw in combinations, throws his legs out there. He fights almost similar to his brother Davison in terms of stalking his opponents and just trying to land those big shots. I think one of those big shots will close the distance and land on Gordon and eventually put him out. But I'm just a little bit skeptical, as I do need to see a little bit more tape for him before I can go lock of the night deep on him. Now, don't get me wrong. I think he wins this fight relatively easily. Malcolm Gordon's jiu-jitsu is good, don't get me wrong, but we all know that saying, every time you punch a black belt, he turns into a brown belt, purple belt. Like, I think that's what's going to happen here with Gordon and Figueiredo. The spot that I actually like the most, though, the under 2.5. I think that there's a good amount of value on that. Let me just pull up what the number is on that. But I think that there's some solid value on that, given that both guys can be finished and can finish as well. In terms of the under, we're looking at the under 2.5 around minus 145. I think there's some good value there. I think that Figueiredo, if he does start to slow down late, Gordon, I've seen him in the past go out there and put a little bit of a pace on his opponents late and then eventually find a finish. And I think he should be able to do that here against Figueiredo if this fight does find into the third round. However, I do think that Gordon still, training with Joseph Altolini and trying to round out his striking game is still going to struggle in terms of eating shots. And I think that Figueiredo has enough power to stick Malcolm Gordon here and then eventually find the finish. So I'm going Figueiredo, and I'm going Figueiredo first round knockout. Don't mind him being a parlay piece, but I do think the under 2.5 is a little bit better of a spot to cover either side here in case Figueiredo truly doesn't find that kill shot late. Mike Lowry is saying, you ever make bets way ahead of time and then they look terrible at the weigh-ins? You ever back out of that play? The only time that something like this has come to mind for me is when Ketlin Vieira fought Yana Kunitskaya, and she looked horrible on the scales. I had a parlay with her, and I didn't hedge out of it. I'm not a hedging man. Some people might want to hedge out of it, but I do think that I probably should have, especially considering how she looked on the scale and how successful Kunitskaya was for the majority of that fight. But again, hindsight is always 20/20. But that's really the only time it's really come to where it's really come to my mind, where I've bet somebody and then they look bad. Kilogina Housing got here just in time. The people's main event. Gordon got the jiu-jitsu, but my grandma can rock him. I like it. Zach A, I don't believe I'll be doing a Bellator video this week. I might. No promises, but I'm definitely going to be dropping something on the Patreon for those guys. I might have a lock of the night play for it. Not 100% sure. But better saying fight doesn't go to decision minus 190. I don't mind that either. All right. Like I said, my favorite spot on this fight, under 2.5, but I am going to take Figueiredo, and I don't mind anybody parlaying him either. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Anderson dos Santos going up against Miles Johns. We got plus 150 on dos Santos, minus 170 on Miles Johns. And this is one of those fights where it might be looking like it's going Miles Johns' way, but I do think that dos Santos has that chaotic nature about him that he could eventually find something that will allow him to translate it into a finish here. Now, Johns, has that wrestler type of striking style. It's just big shots, not many combinations, just goes out there and throws big shots to kind of be the more intimidating fighter. Dos Santos, we've seen a little bit of an improvement in him in terms of being able to be a little bit more reckless so that he can find the openings of his opponents. And I expect him to do the same thing here against Miles Johns. I'm totally expecting him to lose that first round. But after that, I think that Johns has shown the ability or the flaw in terms of slowing down later in fights. And I do think that Dos Santos has shown that he has the capability of taking advantage of fighters that slow down later in fights. And I do think that Johns, his habit, his go-to reflex when he is in desperation mode would be a takedown. And that will go right into Dos Santos's game plan of either hooking up a guillotine, which we know he has a very nasty guillotine, or eventually at least playing that guard game, finding a reversal or finding a submission. And I think that's what's going to be happening here. So I think that Johns could potentially knock him out in the first round. He has the power to do so. But I think the longer that this fight goes, it actually favors Dos Santos. I think that Dos Santos, he had wrestling trouble against Nad Narimani, who I do believe has a better gas tank and a little bit better of a striking skill set, as he showcased in the first round against Dos Santos. Nad Narimani put on a great striking clinic in that first round, and then in the second and third round started going to the takedowns. But I think that Johns, he might land a big shot here or there, but I do think that Dos Santos has seen, even from himself and proven to himself, that the more chaotic of a fight that he is able to create, the more success that he'll be able to find. And that's exactly what I think he's going to be able to do here against Johns. Lose the first round and then start putting on him in the second and possibly finding a finish in the third. So the spot that I'm going to be looking at as Dos Santos by sub. Let me pull that up for you guys real quick. Dos Santos by sub is sitting at plus 435. I like that. And even Santos in round 3 plus 1700. That's another thing that I'm going to be looking at there. If you guys do remember the Johns and the Natividad fight, Johns had a lot of trouble in terms of taking Natividad down, and he did win a good amount of minutes, pushing him up against the cage and just trying to win minutes off of that alone. And then obviously found that finish in the third round. You know, cheap finish in my mind. You know, if you guys remember that exchange, Miles Johns grabs the inner glove, which is completely illegal, so that he keeps Kevin Natividad within his range and then uncorks an absolute bomb on him and knocks him out. So very unfortunate knockout for Kevin Natividad there, but Johns did bend the rules a little bit to get that finish late. But I do think that Dos Santos will give him even more trouble in this fight. So I'm going Dos Santos, and I'm going Dos Santos with a late sub as well. Ethan Cruz in the chat saying you don't mind entertainment for this drive to New Jersey. Stay safe, brother. Appreciate you watching it. About better saying Lachlan I always favors Fortis MMA. Not this time around. Not this time around. Ava McCluskey is saying we love you here in Ireland. Love you guys as well. Which opinion on the fight doesn't go to decision in the main event at plus money. You guys have to stick around. I haven't gotten to that yet, but I will get there. But better round 3. Dos Santos round 3 is plus 1250. I'm going by what's on best fight odds currently, and I believe they had it at plus 1700 on 5 dimes. Again, it's going to be skewed. There might be 1200 some places, 1700 other places, but I do like Dos Santos here. Nicholas West saying shit. I was leaning Miles Johns here. Back to the tape. I go, yeah, hit that tape, brother. Hit that tape. All right. Let's move on to the next fight. Here we got Khalid Taha going up against Sergey Morozov, minus 145 on Taha, plus 125 on Morozov. And I feel like we've been seeing, well, not feel like, we've definitely been seeing some movement here on the Morozov line. He initially opened up, actually, let me see what BetOnline opened him up at. BetOnline opened him up at plus 130. We had some Taha money coming in, pushing him to plus 145. And now we are getting that Morozov love coming back in, and he's around that plus 125 range. Morozov is one of my favorite dogs on this card, and I feel like he's getting the shit end of the stick in terms of being the underdog in this fight, especially, you know, coming off that loss to Umar Nurmagomedov in his UFC debut. Morozov obviously came over from the M1 global scene as the champion over there, makes his debut against Umar Nurmagomedov, like I said. Outmatched in that fight. You can't really blame Morozov for that. Nurmagomedov is a very skilled opponent, as we saw in that fight. Khalid Taha, on the other hand, has had a couple fights inside the UFC now. Last fight, a very tough fight to go up there and fight a guy like Raoni Barcelos and come out on the losing end. You can't really blame him for that, man. That's a very tough fight, and a lot of people obviously know that. He had that arm triangle choke win over Bruno Silva, which got changed to a no contest after he was popped by USADA. Knocks out Boston Salmon before that, and then gets grinded out by Nadner Omani the fight before that. And I think that's a very important part of that fight. Now, that's where it seems like Taha struggles. He has a little bit of experience. I believe he said like a German D2 wrestling type of experience. And you see it at times, like he did make Bruno Silva go 2 of 11 on takedown attempts. But when Bruno Silva was successful with the takedown attempts, he was able to hold that top position like he did in that second round and steal that second round, eventually losing in that third round, which I truly think it came down to that third round. But I do think that we're seeing a better Bruno Silva now than we did back in 2019. Raoni Barcelos landing takedowns, having the better of the striking exchanges, almost finished Taha on numerous occasions. But we did see the takedowns be a good part of Raoni Barcelos' game. And then obviously the Nadner Omani fight. I believe he gave up 6 takedowns in that fight. Now he shows, I want to say he shows like a 65% takedown defense rate, but a lot of that has got to be skewed. The 61% takedown defense rate. A lot of that has got to be skewed by that Bruno Silva fight where Silva, like I said, went 2 of 11. I think Morozov will have more success on takedowns than Bruno Silva did, and I think he'll have even more success in terms of keeping Taha down and grinding him out in this fight. There's a lot of times where you see Morozov not successful on takedowns in certain fights. but he still does good work with his striking. You got to give Taha the advantage when it comes to the power, but I do think that Morozov can stay competitive enough on the feet that he eventually can find that takedown on Taha and start to steal rounds. He also has great clinch control as well. He can push guys up against the cage, push them up against the rope, whatever you want to call it in M1, and have success there. And I think he'll be able to do the same thing here against Taha, who, in my opinion, truly needs a knockout to actually get the victory in this fight. So I do favor Morozov here. I do think he should actually be the slight favorite in this fight. So I'm going to be pulling the trigger at plus 125, as I do think he's one of the better underdogs on this card. Very skilled, very proven as well. As we all know that the Russian scene is a lot more, unforgiving than the LFAs, the TKOs, the Alaska FCs. Fighting in M1 Globe and having the record that he had definitely showcases that this guy's, top of the level and has a lot of good skills to go out there and showcase in the UFC. And I think that we're going to see him pick up his first ever win inside the UFC this weekend against Khalid Taha. So I'm going Sergey Morozov plus 125. I like it. And I'm going to be going with Morozov via decision as well, as I do think he'll be able to grind out Taha over 15 minutes. Let's see what the odds on Morozov by decision are sitting at. Plus 220. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. So I like Morozov by decision. Let's see what the chat is saying. Urso Mwambeki saying these Kazakhstani fighters are on the rise. Exactly. I just think he was, he got dealt the shit under the stick in his UFC debut going up against a guy like Nurmagomedov. You guys are loving this Gamrot and Stevens fight. I can't wait to get over to it. John West saying, I got Morozov plus 145. Only regret is not taking more. Again, I think he should be the favorite. So you're getting some solid value, even if you're getting at that plus 120 range right now. All right. It doesn't seem like there's too many questions on this fight. Let's keep this thing moving along. Next up, we got Amanda Lemos going up against Montserrat Ruiz, plus 425 on Montserrat Ruiz and minus 550 on Lemos. This is one of those weird ones in terms of Ruiz, in terms of her name. I've seen them call her Montserrat Conejo as well. I've seen other places call her Montserrat Ruiz. I'm going to go with Ruiz. If they do Conejo once again on the broadcast this weekend, I'll officially change it to Conejo. But if I'm not mistaken, Conejo is her nickname, which she's going to be going with, but we'll see how it actually ends up going here. But Lemos minus 550, a little bit heavy of a price tag, but I think she should go in there and do solid work. I think she's going to have the significant striking advantage in this fight, and I'd be very surprised if Ruiz is able to, get her into that death clutch that she was able to continuously get Cheyenne Bays in her UFC debut. If you guys remember, Bays was a huge favorite in that fight as well, and Ruiz was able to stifle her with that head and arm position and absolutely just raining punches down on her, and Bays just could not do anything to get out of that position. More often than not, the best way to get out of that position is, just take the back of their opponent. But even when she tried getting a hook in or something like that, Ruiz's grip on her head was just so powerful that Bays just could not get out of it. And I think that Lemos, I think she'll be very cognizant of those situations. And I think that her striking will allow her to stay out of those positions, landing the bigger shots, and eventually finding that knockout blow, which should give her the victory this weekend. Minus 550 is a steep price tag. I think she is parlayable. I do think that you can get it done. I do think that she can go out there and get it done. Ruiz only has one loss on her record, and it is to Danielle Taylor in a fight that she lost via decision. And that was a fight where she was more often than not getting outstruck in that fight. But here against with Lemos, she's dealing with somebody that has much heavier power and has a lot better finishing abilities. The way that she was able to make Lavinia Hanata Souza look like an absolute amateur is mind-blowing to me. If you guys remember, Lavinia Souza came into the UFC as a minus 1,400 favorite over Alex Chambers, and say what you want about Chambers, to even be minus 1,400 against anybody should let you know what kind of level of skill that this fighter is dealing with. And Lavinia Souza, former Invicta champion, had a ton of success, on the UFC and in the Invicta scene. But Amanda Lemos made her look like a complete amateur, dropping her with jabs and, just landing almost anything on her. I think she'll be able to do the same thing here against Ruiz. Like I said, I do believe that she's going to have the size advantage here as well. 5'4", 65 inches for Amanda Lemos, and we got 5 foot nothing and 61-inch reach for Ruiz. So you can definitely see the advantage that Lemos is going to be having in this fight, and I truly believe she'll be, maintaining her distance while landing power jabs and power strikes to keep Ruiz on the outside and then eventually find that finish. So I'm going Lemos, and I'm going Lemos probably first or second round TKO. I'll definitely have her in a couple like D-gen parlays. I do think that she can get her work done here. All right, let's see what the chat is saying here. Manny Ravuru saying Lemos inside the distance. I like it. OKK saying Shavkat, Gan, Topuria, Griffin, Tuivasa, Pereira, Burns. My biggest parlay today. To date, made 9K. That's a damn good one. And Bay is saying we've seen Lemos not do too well off of her back. That is true. The Leslie Smith fight, she did struggle with it a little bit. The Inoue fight, she did a good job in terms of nullifying the damage that was coming away from Inoue. That was a fight where I was actually on Inoue because I thought that Lemos would struggle with that, but she did a good job in terms of getting back to her feet, nullifying the takedowns, and nullifying the amount of control time, and then dishing out the damage to truly get the better of her opponents. I think she'll be able to do the same thing here to Montserrat Ruiz. But yeah, I think she'll be able to get her out of there a lot quicker, so she doesn't have to worry about the control time here. John West saying Lemos is my favorite parlay piece this week, going up the inside the distance, but Nektat hasn't been finished yet. She only has one loss. Yeah. Peachy Conejo means bunny and is her nickname. There we go. It's Booty saying I'll follow you home, bitch. I love it. The African saying Ruiz via classic women's MMA head and arm throws and squeezing her head. Jokes, I'm staying away from this fight. Unranking women's MMA is way too much of a shit show, in my opinion, to bet on such a big favorite. I think if Lemos was active enough, she'd already be ranked, to be honest. Okay is saying Gamrot, Islam, Charlo, and Boxing Saturday Parlay thoughts. I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Daniel Rodriguez minus 320 taking on short notice newcomer Preston Parsons. I kept wanting to call him Parson Preston because it feels like Preston should be the last name, no? Right? Preston is the last name, if I'm not mistaken. So this guy has two last names. Whatever. Either way, Parsons, if you watch his last several fights, you'll see that he's a bit of a banshee, likes to go in there, overwhelm his opponents, big strikes, eventually leading to takedowns, eventually leading to submissions. But it just seems like his opponents are almost defeated by the time they step inside the cage. They break under his pressure. Most often than not, guys will just, willingly accept the shelling up position up against the cage, let Parsons go ham on them, and let them get the finish as well. But I think he's going to be dealing with a ton more resistance here from Daniel Rodriguez. Let me just quickly go over Preston Parsons' record for you guys, because I did tweet before coming on here, a couple hours before coming on here. I did say that there were a couple tapology mistakes on Parsons' records, which should let you guys know who was actually watching the tape and who's just tapo capping this. The two of them that are out there, it looks like they've actually been corrected now. Shout out to Tapology, correcting the mistakes right off the bat. So initially they had Valdir Arujo submitting Parsons in the first round. That was incorrect. That actually happened in the second round. And then the Socrates Pierre fight, they initially had it listed as 44 seconds victory for Parson Prestons. It actually ended at the ending of the first round. And lastly, they also had for Wesley Barnes, they just said technical, but it was a guillotine choke finish that he choked his ass out. So shout out to Tapology making the changes, fixing the mistakes. But whoever's tapo capping it now, you'll definitely know that they're on the right track now. But yeah, Parson Prestons, not even one of his pro MMA fights have ever gone to a decision. I think only two fights have ever hit the second round. He's gone 1-1 in those fights. He does have recognizable names on his record, like Valdir Arujo, who he lost to via guillotine choke, Ignacio Bahamondes, who he was able to armbar finish halfway through that first round, and then Mike Perry, who was Mike Perry finished him via punches at the ending of that first round. But it seems like I said, Parsons seems to be a bit of a banshee. Goes out there, throws everything into his strikes, throws everything into his takedowns. It seems like a guy that is prime to start gassing as the fight starts to go on later, just as we saw in the Valdir Araujo fight, who was having a ton of success in the striking round and near the ending of that second round, and then eventually finding that guillotine choke to get the win in that fight. In this fight against Daniel Rodriguez, I'd be surprised if he had as much success as he has had in his past couple fights. I think Rodriguez is going to do a very good job in terms of maintaining his distance, keeping Parsons on the outside, and just jabbing his face off, throwing a 1-2 every now and then. But we do definitely know that Rodriguez has the better striking in this fight. And I do think that he goes out there and absolutely starches Parsons. I think he finishes him probably in the second or third round once Parsons starts to slow down. And I do think that Parsons, his last fight was just over a month ago, and he did take this fight on short notice. But I do think that he's going to go out there and believe that he only has maybe a round and a half to go out there and pull off the victory against Daniel Rodriguez. The closest trouble that we've ever seen Daniel Rodriguez have in terms of being close to being finished was his fight against Dwight Grant, which only lasted 2.5 minutes, where both guys took the fight on less than 12 hours notice. If you guys remember, both guys were scheduled to fight other people. Both of their opponents fall out, and luckily they're both weighed in, same weight class, so they just match each other up and they go out there and have an absolute barn burner of a fight for 2.5 minutes. Dwight Grant almost finishes Daniel Rodriguez. Rodriguez gets his wits back about him and then finishes Dwight Grant shortly thereafter. But other than that, we haven't really seen Daniel Rodriguez in too much trouble, right? Tim Means landed a takedown on him. Nicholas Dalby landed a takedown on him, I believe. And Mike Perry landed a takedown on him. But Rodriguez did a good job in terms of nullifying the damage and submission attempts that were coming his way, getting back to his feet, and then going back to his style, which is just, striking, technical striking. That Joe Schilling effect is really showcasing with Daniel Rodriguez, especially when he's really in his groove with his striking. And I do think that we're going to see that here against Preston Parsons. So I'm going to take Daniel Rodriguez. I think he wins this fight relatively easily. I think he knocks out Preston Parsons as well. So I'm going to be taking Daniel Rodriguez, probably second or third round KO. In terms of odds, what we're looking at, we got Rodriguez by KO, -125, makes sense. Rodriguez in round 2 plus 400, Rodriguez in round 3 plus 800. I think those are some solid spots. So yeah, I do like Rodriguez here, and I do think he turns away the UFC newcomer, Preston Parsons. Sean V saying, don't like lock in MMA, but if I have three, they're Islam, Vieira, and Stevens. Ooh, Stevens as lock. Interesting. And Bay is saying D-Rod is the lock, also live for submission. I like it. The African is saying D-Rod inside the distance is my favorite play of the night. Parsons hasn't really impressed me. Yeah. Not to mention the lack of competition. Yeah. Ethan Cruz saying lock of the night. He's all over D-Rod here. I'm assuming Sunnyvale, D-Rod, and Islam Parlay. I like that. John West saying on Clint's early Read podcast, Dan said he trained with Parsons for a little and did have a war with Jeremy Stevens in the gym, but he's still picking D-Rod. Interesting. BLT, Shards of Topology, and Goat Milk. Sean V. Parsons is tough. I don't think D-Rod can finish him. D-Rod by decision, but if there's a finish, it's from Parsons. I think D-Rod can finish him, but I think it's going to come from Parsons gassing himself out. The guy just, again, he's a fucking banshee. He goes out there and throws everything into his strikes and everything into his takedowns. And if he's not successful in terms of getting a finish, I think he's going to end up getting finished. And I think that D-Rod could actually finish him with strikes here. Okay, saying Mr. Young Figgy pick. I got Figgy by first round knockout. Okay, saying if Mike Perry took you down, I don't trust you to win against a submission artist. I believe Mike Perry just took him down twice, and I'm sure Rodriguez really wasn't expecting him to go out there and get that takedown. I think we'll see Rodriguez a little bit more successful. And again, Rodriguez's submission defense is pretty fucking good. If I'm not mistaken, he's the 10th planet guy as well. Keaton Omer Basic saying, I know this is off topic. McGregor saying he was injured before the fight. Do you buy into that? And do you think UFC priority was saving the card? I'm just tired of the whole McGregor talk, to be honest. Like, he can say all he wants. Somebody put it out there. Like, after his first Nate Diaz loss, he was humble about it. and he went back to the gym and he fixed what he needed to, and he got the win the next time. He's not doing that this time around. It seems like he's just absolutely going crazy. Ben Peak is the under 2.5 or 1.5 in this fight. I believe it's 1.5 on the majority of sites, but I would take the under 2.5 if you have access to it. And Greg Love saying Preston Parsons to quote the Mac. Who the fuck is that guy? Peachy, I feel like minus 230 made it a DGen play, but I also like D-Rod to win. I like. Okay, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Billy Quarantillo going up against Gabriel Benitez, minus 155 on Benitez and plus 135 on Quarantillo. We have seen some action come in on Quarantillo as fight week has progressed. Oh, wow. Interesting. Quarantillo actually opened up at minus 135 on Bet Online and got quickly bet to the dog, making it all the way up to about plus 180. Now he's around plus 140. And I do kind of like him in this fight. Now, if you guys remember, I felt like I was literally the only guy going out there and betting Gavin Tucker against Billy Quarantillo last time around. I got fucking, completely disparaged and mocked for taking Gavin Tucker in that fight, but I felt very confident in my read, as I felt like if you get a guy that is technically much better than Quarantillo and has the proper show in terms of going out there and having a solid success with cardio as well, I think that they'll be able to beat a guy like Billy Quarantillo, and that's exactly what I thought we were getting in Gavin Tucker. A lot of people had that Rick Glenn fight in their mind. I thought that was an anomaly, and it showcased in that fight. Obviously, Gavin Tucker goes out there and quickly gets knocked out by who the fuck? Dan Ige shortly thereafter, but at least he went out there and did what he needed to do against Billy Quarantillo. Now, here with Gabriel Benitez, we know what Benitez's game is, right? He's a good striker, heavy leg kicks. Obviously, he was able to stop Justin James with leg kicks in his fight. But when he goes out there and fights a guy that's going to push it onto him just as much as he's pushing it onto his opponent, I think he meets a little resistance and then he starts to falter a little bit. And I think he's going to meet that here with Quarantillo. Now, Quarantillo, I like to call him like the Homer Simpson of MMA. He takes the best shots from his opponents, and then he comes back and eventually, takes over later in their fights. Benitez, decent cardio, nothing that jumps off the page, but he's not Rodolfo Vieira with cardio either. So I do think that he'll be able to stay in this fight from minute 1 to minute 15. But I do think that that pace and relentless pressure of Quarantillo is going to really make it hard for Benitez to, one, get his kicks off, and two, have effective striking in this fight. I think that Billy Q will be able to muster up and take whatever Benitez throws at him early in this fight, and then do that Billy Q thing around that 1.5 mark, that, halfway through that second round, I think he'll start to take over, maybe land a couple of takedowns on Benitez here, but really start to rough him up with that pace and pressure. I think he's going to continuously push it on Benitez in this fight. Technically speaking, I think that Benitez is the better fighter here, but I do think that he will be I think he will struggle with the pace and pressure that Quarantillo starts to pull or push on him. I love that about Quarantillo. Like, the longer a fight goes, the more successful he is, the more stronger he becomes, the more confident he becomes. And I think that's going to be important for him against a savvy veteran like Gabriel Benitez in this fight. Another thing that has kind of been talked about in this fight, but I don't think is going to be as big of a factor as most people are making it out to be, is that Gabriel Benitez is going back down to 145 pounds here. He fought, how many fights now at 155? He fought his last 2 fights at 145 pounds, but he did used to fight. Sorry, he fought his last 2 fights at 155 pounds, but his last couple but for the majority of his career, he's been a 145er. So I don't think him coming back down in weight is going to have too much of an effect. If anything, I think that it will allow, it will give Quarantillo the possible cardio advantage and allow him to, drown Benitez the later that this fight goes. If you guys do remember, the last time we saw Gabriel Benitez, or even any sign of him, was when he was scheduled to fight Jonathan Pierce. He missed weight in that fight, and Jonathan Pierce decided not to take that fight. But here he is coming back at 145 pounds. So I'm interested to see, one, what he looks like on the scale, and two, how it will potentially impact his performance. There's got to be a reason he went up to 155 pounds and now he's deciding to go back to 145 pounds. And again, the cut didn't go great for him last time around. This is not the guy Billy Q, this is not the guy that you want to be going up against if you're going to be struggling to make weight and it possibly affecting your cardio and your game plan in your uh, later in the fight. So yeah, I like Quarantillo here. I'm going to take Quarantillo by decision. I'll take him late to win as well. Start to pick up halfway through this fight and then get the decision by winning rounds 2 and 3 here. I will say Benitez is quite durable. Seems like the majority of the love here on the comment section is for Quarantillo. Ursula Moambeki saying one hard left body kick from Benitez should do it. Interesting. Ben saying your man CJ said it best. Hard to trust Billy Q after his last performance. Dude looked like a bag of milk. I haven't heard Cody's take on it yet. But again, one performance. Like, we got to be careful, guys. We can't just throw out a guy and completely discredit his resume after one loss. We can't do that. We cannot do that. Ben Peak is saying, I got Billy losing this fight. Cardio, toughness isn't everything when you got to worry about power uppercuts and leg and get kicks, for sure. But I wonder how effective Benitez will be with those kicks if he's getting pushed back for the majority of the fight. You're not as successful with leg kicks when you're being pushed back the entire fight, I think. John West is saying, I got Billy Q at plus 180 for a unit early, but not really loving it. Thinking about cashing out if Benitez looks good on the scales. What do you think? I like Billy, and those odds are fucking great. I would let it ride personally, but that's just me, especially considering that I do think that he actually ends up winning the fight as well. Not Julie saying gas tank will not be an issue for Benitez. He didn't gas against Yanez. Yanez? You mean Morales? Because Morales, they went 3 rounds. Has he ever fight yet? No, he's never fight Yanez. I think you're getting it mixed up. Again, like I said, it's not a huge detriment, but being pushed back and fighting a guy like Billy Q might bring out gas tank issues more than anything. Didn't he go up in weight because he missed weight in his last bout? So he fought Sadiq Yusuf. That was his last fight at 145 pounds. He made 146. Against Bandanai, he made 145. Against Jason Knight, he was 144. Against Enrique Barzola, 145. I don't think he's ever missed weight at 145 pounds before. Andre Fili made weight. Collard made weight. And then his first UFC fight made weight. Yeah, his only issue was that Jonathan Pierce fight where he missed the weight, but now he's still coming back and fighting at 145 pounds. Interesting. Just get through the rest of these comments. What's going on, CBA? Sarge23, can we get a quick recap of your picks so far? Let me pull it up. I got Nascimento first round sub. I got Figueiredo first round KO. Dos Santos round 3 sub. Morozov decision. Lemos first round KO. Rodriguez round 2 or round 3 KO. And I'm taking Billy Q right now via decision. Greg Love saying, I would love to see Quarantillo in a 5-rounder and see if he can weaponize the cardio in the championship rounds. He has to win these fights first, though. I absolutely agree. I would love to see Billy Q in a 5-round fight. George Manixopoulos afraid Benitez might steal the second round, winning the first 3 minutes of it, and win a decision while clearly losing the last 7 minutes of the fight. That could happen as well, too. So yeah, I'm taking Quarantillo. There are other dogs that I like a little bit more, but I do like Quarantillo in this spot, and I do think that he can pull it off. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Dustin Stoltzfus plus 180 going up against Adolfo Vieira at minus 220. And we saw what happens with Vieira when he's not able to get the early finish against his opponents. We saw with Anthony Hernandez last time around. So shout out to anybody that took Anthony Hernandez and saw the success in, when Vieira's cardio starts to fuck him up. Now, Stoltzfus, I'd be a little bit more confident in him if I felt like he would be able to successfully stop takedowns here. I don't think he's going to be able to stop takedowns. I do think that Vieira will be able to snatch up that sub relatively easily in this fight. With that said, though, I'm not trusting Adolfo Vieira at minus, anything worse than the minus 200 anymore. When somebody has such a large deficiency in the cardio realm, or at least in one part of their game, it's hard for me to back them. So I'm going to be keeping Vieira out of parlays myself this week. Stoltzfus is quite, he's quite experienced. He's been there. He's done that. He has, how many fights does he have? He has 15 fights under his belt. So he actually has 7 more fights than Vieira does. He's only lost 2 times. Obviously, his last time against Cal Daukaus. Daukaus saying that he wanted to show off his striking in that fight. However, he ends up quickly clinching up with Stoltzfus, dragging him to the ground and just kind of grinding him out from on top, having some success from the top, but not actually getting the submission finish there. His other loss was earlier on in his career where he lost via decision. So he's never actually been submitted in his career. Has a couple submission victories of his own as well. But I'm not sure how good his submission defense will be here against a high-level guy like Rodolfo Vieira. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if he does nullify the submission game from Vieira, just plays it super, super safe, and just waits for Vieira to slow down and then starts to take over in the second, third rounds. I would rather play Stoltzfus to win in rounds 2 and round 3 than bet this fight at all, or bet the Vieira side at all in this fight. Like Stoltzfus round 2 plus 950, Stoltzfus round 3 plus 1750. I'd rather sprinkle those than parlay and play Vieira in the spot. I do think Vieira wins it. Don't get me wrong. Vieira in round 1 is plus 170. Vieira via decision is minus 105. I'm not sure how many times we can actually bank on Vieira's opponents to stop the takedowns and then stop the submission that's going to be coming their way. He has such crushing top pressure, and you could definitely tell that Anthony Hernandez put the time in with his submission defense, accepted the fact that he was going to get taken down, but worked his ass off to maintain that submission defense and stop anything that Vieira was going to be throwing his way, and then eventually take over in that second. And that I believe he finished him in the second round, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I like Vieira here. I think he gets the takedown and gets the submission relatively easy in this fight, but I'm not playing that minus 220 fight. That minus 220, nor am I going to trust him to parlay him either. Nigel Lee saying Vieira already stole enough of my money. The African saying Vieira round 1, Stoltzfus got taken down, held down by Daukaus, and Vieira is an entirely different kettle of fish. I agree. Elijah One Dream, do you have any advice for DraftKings lineups? I haven't done any DraftKings content in a while. I will eventually do it. No promises as to when. But if you have any questions regarding DraftKings lineups, the best time to ask me would be my fight day live chat, 1 p.m. Eastern every fight day. So if you have any questions then, hit me up at that point. Ben Peak, you like the Vieira and Stoltzfus to not start round 3, minus 160, minus 165 range. I don't mind it. I don't mind that. Nigel Lee, when you lose to a guy named Fluffy, you're an automatic fade until you win again. Fluffy's not bad. Hernandez is a solid fighter. He had a very rough stretch at the beginning of his UFC career. Did manage to get a win over Park, I believe his name was. But Anthony Hernandez is a very, very solid fighter. Greg Love, can Vieira even improve his cardio anymore, or is it just if he gets to finish in the first 6 minutes or not? That's what I think it is. The latter right there. I think it's hard for a guy like him to improve his cardio, because he's such a big and imposing guy and a very strong guy, and that's what he relies on to get his wins. But yeah, I think he gets the wins. Mbaye is saying Stoltzfus doesn't push the pace like Fluffy. I agree. John West saying I got Vieira by sub round 1 plus 225 and round 2 plus 500. Hoping the cardio was more of a bad weight cut issue and he's fixed that, but definitely not loving it if we see round 2. Yeah, I think that his cardio is always going to be an issue. I think he has about 6 to 7 minutes. 6 to 7 minutes. If he doesn't find out after that, I think it's going to get very, very tough. Manny Ravaru saying under 2.5. I like it. If you do have access to the under 2.5, I'll take it. Pete, agree. Only play as Sprinkle Stoltz round 2 and round 3. Yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing unofficially as well. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Seems to be the talk of the chat thus far. Jeremy Stevens, plus 175 against Matish Gamrot. I'm going to go with Gamrot. I got to remember how to say his first name again. I feel like it's like a sh on the end of Matesh. But either way, minus 210 on Gamrot here, the gamer. Interesting fight. So what we've seen from Gamrot is obviously his UFC fights. He's had a very successful KSW run, obviously going 17-0 before coming to the UFC. A lot of that success was pertinent on him getting takedowns, controlling his opponents, and just beating them up from on top, maybe getting a submission here and there, maybe getting a TKO here and there. But a lot of his success comes from being able to take his opponent down. His striking is good enough. It's serviceable. But I got to give Jeremy Stephens the advantage there. Better leg kicks, better calf kicks, as we've obviously seen, better power as well. Obviously, the experience level, I think that level of experience that Jeremy Stephens has gone up against, it vastly outweighs whatever Gamrot has gone up against. And when Jeremy Stephens is on, he's on. Now, Jeremy Stephens, I believe he has a 62. I'm going to get the actual number here for you guys, but I believe his takedown defense rate is roughly around 60%. Let me pull this up. 28 and 18. Takedown defense is sitting at 65%. Now, the issue is, though, you don't get guys that normally go out there and try to take him down. Like his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights are mainly against strikers. Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez twice, Zabit Magomed who takes him down 3 times. How much control time does he get in that fight? 2.5 minutes of control time, so not much time on top. He goes 3 of 8 on takedowns against Jeremy Stephens, and then Jose Aldo doesn't go to take him down or anything like that. So it's very few and far between where you see guys actually attempt takedowns on Jeremy Stephens. So you got to wonder how much success a guy like Mateusz Gamrot is going to have on Stephens here. Now, Frankie Edgar, this fight's a little bit dated. This goes back to UFC 205, but Frankie Edgar was able to land 5 of 14 takedown attempts on Jeremy Stephens here and only accumulate just under 5 minutes of control time against Jeremy. We know Jeremy has decent takedown defense. That's my concern here. But when he does give takedown defense, when he does give up takedowns, is when he ends up losing fights. And it's hard for me to believe that Gamrot won't at least land a couple takedowns here to at least sway the judges. Gamrot does a good job in terms of his movement. He has a great takedown entry, which is he fights from the southpaw stance. He shoots us straight down the middle, and then once his foot, or once that strike allows him to close the distance, he dips under, snatches that single leg, and more often than not gets his opponents to the ground. I think he'll have that same amount of success here against Jeremy Stephens. I'm just going to be hella concerned in terms of Gamrot's ability to successfully keep Stephens on the ground and then nullify the amount of damage that's going to be coming his way from Jeremy Stephens on the feet. With that said, like we saw it in the Guram Kutateladze fight, right? Gamrot was able to land a couple takedowns in that fight. He landed 5 takedowns in that fight, but only controlled about only got 3.5 minutes of control time in that fight. He went 5 of 16 on takedowns, so only 31% and very minimal control with those takedowns too. Kutateladze obviously comes around the winning end because he lands the more significant strikes. And, even Guram actually said after the fight that he didn't believe that he deserved to win that fight. I think it was just because of that third round where, Gamrot seemed to have most of his success with the takedowns. If you guys actually look back, he got 1.5 minutes of control time in that third round, 3 of 7 on takedown attempts. So maybe the momentum was starting to swing towards Gamrot's way, which is why Guram felt like he didn't win that fight. But I thought those first 2 rounds, Guram did a really good job in terms of nullifying the takedowns and then landing better damage on the feet. But man, this is a tough one for me. I am going to take Gamrot to win this fight. I do think he lands the takedowns. I do think that he gets okay control time, but I do think we see Stephens get back to his feet and land some decent damage of his own. Very close fight. Much closer than the odds indicate. I feel like the value could potentially be on Stephens in this fight, but I am going to take Gamrot to win this fight. I'm going to take him to win by decision, but by no means am I going to be throwing him into any crazy parlays or anything, because I do believe that Gamrot could make this a much closer fight, like I said, than the odds indicate, and Stephens does a decent job of inflicting damage on his opponents, especially when he gets back to his feet. Yeah, I like Gamrot here, but it's a very, very close fight. Very, very close fight. I'm going Gamrot via decision, but I could potentially see Stephens possibly clocking Gamrot, nullifying Gamrot's movement with calf kicks. I understand that they're opposite stances here. So that's going to make it a little bit harder for Stevens to be successful with it. But I still do think that Stevens could find success with it. And then obviously following up with some punches. But I do think that Gamrot will do a good job in terms of maintaining the distance and then closing the distance and landing takedowns when he needs to land them. And not to mention Gamrot, ATT mainstay now. So you got to believe that their work is definitely rubbing off on him and he should be able to find some success here. So I'm going Gamrot and I'm going Gamrot via decision. Yeah. All right. Greg Love saying, Jeremy, when I push people, they don't fucking move Stevens. I love it. Okay, I love the heathen, but Gamrot going to walk through him, in my opinion. Walk through, I think that's a stretch. Mbe is saying Gamrot has trouble to hold people down. Exactly. Nigel Lee, under 2.5, minus 120, that line. Already bet it. 12.5 minutes, and I'm praying for violence. The only thing that's kind of keeping me away from that is the amount of times that we'll see Gamrot close the distance, clinch up, try to drag this to the ground. That could nullify the violence that you're expecting in this fight. But I do like Gamrot via decision. What is that line specifically, though? Gamrot by decision plus 215. Okay, Jeremy going up in weight, so I bet he'll be a lot smaller than Gamrot. In terms of the metrics, 5'9", 71-inch reach for Jeremy Stevens and 5'10", 70-inch reach for Gamrot. So I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. You know, Jeremy has fought at 155 pounds in the past. Obviously, I believe he was scheduled to fight Jakar Close at 155. I could be off on that too. He's fought at 55 before. It's been a while. Don't get me wrong. It's been a while. John West, I took the half year on Stevens, thinking Zabit could potentially toss just about anyone. And if it remains stunning, I was very impressed with the first round against Cater. I liked his press conference too. Uncle Wheezy in the house. He's saying, I'm on Gamrot by decision plus 210. I like it. Pepe Silva believes that there's tremendous value on Stevens. I do believe he's a slight value side, but I would rather take Gamrot by decision to get my decent value there. African saying Guram Kututaladze is a freak and presents more issues than a 35-year-old Stevens, moving back up to 155. Gamrot was very competitive. I just don't see him not being able to control Stevens. Interesting. James Beck saying, dang, your whole breakdown sounded like Stevens. Then you went Gamrot, go with the gut lock. My gut's still telling me Gamrot. Like the difference here though is I feel like Gamrot can be composed and disciplined enough on the feet to kind of capitalize on anytime Jeremy Stevens starts to overextend on his combinations or throws his legs out there. Maybe he could just snatch that single leg. It's one of his better takedowns as well. I think Gamrot will have success with the takedowns. Let's see. Ben Peake saying, I like Gamrot's lock, but I respect the case that the fight should be closer. Yeah. All right. That brings us to our co-main event. We got Miesha Tate making her return. Minus 140 comes in as the favorite. Plus 120 is the return on the Belizean bruiser, Maureen Reneau. Now, this is an interesting one, given the story coming into this. We got Miesha Tate coming back from a long layoff, a retirement, coming back from retirement. Let me just confirm I believe her last fight was UFC 205, where she lost against Raquel Pennington. Let me just confirm that fact. Yep. November of 2016. So we're talking about just under a 5-year layoff. She did take a submission grappling fight against Jessica Eye a month after her last UFC fight. But since then, if you guys remember, she took a post with ONE FC being like a brand ambassador or something like that. Didn't really work out in the best of her abilities, I believe. She lived out in Singapore, didn't really enjoy it, came back to the US and got that itch to get back inside the cage. And I think they matched her up pretty well here against Maureen Reneau, who, 44 years old, 9-7-1, and has stated that this is going to be her retirement fight. So it's funny how both women, one looking to get back into the game, one looking to get out, especially on a win would be nice. But Maureen Reneau, 0-4 in her last 4 fights, not a good look. losses to Kat Zingano, Yana Kunitskaya, Raquel Pennington, and then Macy Chiasson. Very good first round from Marion Reneau against Chiasson, and then it really start to go Chiasson's way, where Chiasson just initiated the clinch. She knew she was going to be the stronger woman, and she just absolutely beat up Marion Reneau in those situations. And then obviously landing a late takedown in round 3 to secure that fight for her as well. So good win for Macy Chiasson there. Marion Reneau could just not get anything going at that point in time. How she fares against Miesha Tate here, or how anybody actually, let me get to this first, how anybody has ultimate conviction and ultimate confidence on betting a side in this fight is absolutely nutcase. They're not so, they're a nutcase. Like, I don't know how you could go anything higher than 2 units on either side in this fight. I do believe Miesha Tate wins. I do think that she's going to be the better wrestler. I think her submission defense is going to be good enough that she'll be able to stay out of any type of submissions that Reneau throws out there. I do think that Reneau might be the slightly slicker striker in this situation, especially if they're at distance. I give Reneau the very slight advantage, being the better Muay Thai striker, having more weapons, I think she's a little bit meaner in the striking realm. Where Miesha Tate is going to have to take this fight is the clinch position, is taking it to the ground, hopefully have the better cardio as well, and just grind on Reneau. If we're just going off of IG pictures from what we've been seeing of Miesha Tate as of late, she looks in phenomenal shape. So don't get me wrong. I do think that she's taking this comeback very seriously, and she's definitely done the work that she needs to be in shape to be ready to take over. What kind of surprises me is that Miesha Tate is only 34 years old. So she initially retired when she was only about 29, 30 years old, which is very weird. You would expect a girl like Miesha Tate in her prime years at that time to go out there and just compete and try to get that title once again. She did have 2 kids in that amount of time, so that was probably another reason why she took the time off. But she didn't seem like a woman that was wanting to come back. But we know MMA retirements are temporary. I highly doubt Reneau will make a comeback after she retires here. But I do think that Miesha Tate will send her into a retirement with an 0-5 streak in her last 5 fights. So I'm taking Tate. I'm going to say that she completes takedowns, grinds out Reneau here, wins a decision in this fight. But the longer that this fight stays in the striking realm, I would be sweating my Miesha Tate ticket, as I do believe that Reneau could be the slightly stricter striker and could potentially put a little bit more volume on her as well too. But I think that the longer that this fight goes, the more it favors Miesha Tate. We know she can get stronger as the fight goes on. We know she can finish fights late, but I do think it's going to have to come down to her grappling. And I think that's where she's going to have tremendous success in terms of controlling Reneau, getting her down, and grinding this fight out. So I'm going Miesha Tate and Miesha Tate via decision. But I am not touching this fight with a 10-foot pole, fellas. There's nothing that you guys can make me do to bet on this fight. Maybe put Tate in a crazy lottery or a Hail Mary parlay, but that's really about it. But Tate via decision plus 135, I believe that is the way to go for this fight. Mbe, right on the button. He's saying I wouldn't bet on Tate versus Reneau. I agree. Genie in the house. George Manixopoulos, fade the Coleman at all costs. I agree. Absolutely agree. Kanan Omer Basic saying, is this fight one of those situations where you fade the 40+ years narrative or tricky with the layoff from Tate? This is one of those fights where you just don't fucking bet on it. I personally would not bet on this fight. The only thing I'd probably take a degenerate stab at is Tate via decision. That's about it. African saying Miesha Tate looks juiced at the Gillis on Instagram post where she looks like a smaller version of Gabby Garcia, staying away from the fight, but it's worth knowing that she's looking pretty huge. Yeah, she should be able to successfully implement her grapple heavy game plan here. Greg Love, if Miesha Tate can't beat a 9'7" 144-year-old fighter, she should just retire. I agree. John West made my big play of the week on Miesha minus 245. Had to ride against my favorite fade on her last run. Really worried now that Fandor released a Tate boost for a decision. Feels like a trap. Interesting. Okay, saying Marion is too savage. Tate probably loses this one. Reneau will make this a close fight. I promise you guys. She will make this a close fight. Nobody expected her to even win a round against Chiasson. She won a round off of Chiasson. Now you're talking about a Miesha Tate off of a 5-year layoff. Man, you're playing with fire here. I think she wins, but you're playing with fire. George Manixopoulos, that's the type of bet you'll lose and be extremely mad at yourself regardless of your pick. 44 years old, that's talented. Last fight versus a fighter coming back off a 5-year layoff. Yeah. But better, I'm also on the Tate side. Herb Reneau will knock the ring rust off for Jaw Fest. Interesting. Yeah, you're right. You're right. George Maddoxopoulos, keep calm and don't bet any money on this fight. Your mental health should be a priority. Yeah, absolutely. John West broke up because of her breakup with the coach who she dated for 10 years. I believe they were married, were they not? I believe Tate and Caraway were married. I could actually no way. They were significant others and very close with each other for a long time. And if I'm not mistaken, Brian Caraway actually got her into competing. Bout better. What is the longest UFC lapse in between bouts? I think this is it. I think this could be the longest one. Actually, Nick Diaz. Yeah, shout out to my guy Elijah Dream. I believe his last fight was what 2014. It's been a long time. Ben peaked. Would Tate be a lock for you if this wasn't a comeback for her? Maybe. Depends on what she would have looked like, you know, in that amount of time off. Like she didn't look good against Raquel Pennington, and you know, she wasn't successful on takedowns or anything in that fight. But I do think she'll be successful on takedowns here. Liam Rollwork saying big fan from UK. Thoughts on Dillashaw's return against Sandman? Excuse me. Yeah, that fight's still a couple weeks away. I don't want to touch on that on this podcast, brother. MMA Genie, January 2015. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Diaz fought what's his face? Fucking Anderson, January 2015. So it's been a long time since he's been off. All right, let's get to the co-main event here. Yeah, boob. Yes, you are correct. Dillashaw, Sandhagen next week. Early lean is Sandhagen. That's another fight I'll more than likely not have any action on, but I do like Sandhagen in that fight. All right. Let's move on to the main event here. We got Islam Makhachev minus 600 going up against Thiago Moises, plus 450. Now, a lot of people are like, why the fuck is Islam Makhachev fighting Thiago Moises? Simply put, nobody wants to fight Makhachev. Makhachev doesn't have that high ranking. You know, not as big of a name yet, but I'm sure this main event slot will definitely help him. And a very dangerous fight. Moises is like, I want to skyrocket into these rankings. I want to get a lot more respect. And getting a win over a guy like Makhachev, obviously as a plus 450 underdog, will make some waves, and I should be able to get some wins and some, you know, higher level of opposition off of a win like that. Excuse me. So when I think about this fight, I think about the improvements that Thiago Moises has made with his striking. He's always been a decent striker, but his issue in his past, you know, before I'd say before the Bobby Green fight, he's been a little bit too lackadaisical in terms of implementing that striking. You know, he was always on his back foot. He was always allowing his opponent to dictate the pace. But he had good technique, great striking technique. Very young guy, still, you know, coming into his own. I just want to get his actual age correct here because I feel like he's still carving out what kind of fighter he truly is going to be. 15-4, and he's 26 years old. He was fighting 5-round fights versus Jamal Emmers and Robert Wiley. If people don't know who Robert Wiley is, very solid fighter, very good fighter. But he was fighting those guys 5 years ago when he was 20, 21 years old in 5-round fights, holding that RFA title. But he's slowly starting to become a little bit better. And we're definitely seeing it in that Alex Hernandez fight. We saw it a little bit in the Bobby Green fight. I think that fight was very close. A lot of people want to say Bobby Green deserved to win that fight. That was a close fight. That was a very close fight. I thought Thiago Moises did decent work in that first round, and that third round was very, very close as well. Michael Johnson fight. He gets absolutely starched in that first round and then comes off and pulls off a Hail Mary victory with the ankle lock in that second round, 25 seconds into that second round, albeit. And then Alexander Hernandez. Hernandez, we've known that if you can kind of push the pressure on him, If you can stop his takedowns, he will eventually break. And Thiago Moises had a very successful fight that night. That was one of those fights. If you guys remember, I tweeted, I'm like, how does Thiago Moises win this fight? And although I didn't make Alexander Hernandez my lock of the night play that night, I did have a 2-unit bet on him, as I do think that he was going to be able to stop the takedown of Thiago Moises and then get the better of the striking exchanges, because I expected him to be the faster and more powerful striker. But Thiago Moises was putting it on him from the get-go. Great striking, good combinations, good footwork, and he really put it on Alexander Hernandez. Now, here against Makhachev, I think strike for strike, Thiago Moises could make this a very close fight. However, that takedown is going to come from Makhachev. And although Thiago Moises, high-level BJJ black belt, has a ton of accolades on his record, BJJ-wise, but like, he has the ankle lock over Michael Johnson. You have to go back to Jeff Peterson, 2018, to get his guillotine choke. Then Dave Castillo, 2016. So the longer that his career goes on and the higher level of opponents that he's going up against, he's not getting these submission finishes. He did get a head kick, a knockout victory on the Contender Series, so there is definitely that to look at. Also, Jeff Peterson, if you guys remember, I did talk about him when he fought Preston Parsons as well. So they do share a common opponent there, Thiago Moises and Preston Parsons, I should say. But what I'm trying to get at is, I think that Islam Makhachev's top pressure and his grappling is going to be good enough to kind of nullify the jiu-jitsu that's going to be coming from Thiago Moises. I think that his pressure from the top is good enough. We saw Makhachev go out there and get the better of Davi Ramos in the striking realm, and he just tired him out enough so that he could eventually start to take him down and then grind him out that way. That we saw him have tremendous success against a very high-level BJJ guy there. But here against Thiago Moises, the striking exchanges might be a little bit closer than a lot of people are expecting it to be. I think that Moises could make it a competitive fight. But once this fight does hit the ground, that's where I think that Makhachev will have tremendous success. I'd be surprised if he goes for the takedown right off the bat, like in that first round. I think he might take a round to kind of get comfortable and get cozy in that fight, and then go into the second, third, and fourth, fifth rounds with the takedowns, heavy top pressure. I'd be surprised if he submits Thiago Moises. I'd be a little bit surprised if he actually gets a TKO as well. Thiago Moises has gone 5 rounds at least 3 times in the past and gotten a finish in the 5th round as well against Jamal Emmers. And you got to believe that his cardio is going to be on point to fight a guy like Islam Makhachev. However, the top pressure and the endless grappling that he's going to have to go up against with Islam Makhachev could wear that cardio down. Like, if you go back and watch his 5-round fights, Moises' 5-round fights in the past against prior opponents, it's just him just backing up. Not many grappling exchanges, not many crazy high intensity scenarios compared to this fight, where he's going to have to deal with high activity scenarios against a guy like Islam Makhachev. His cardio could potentially take a hit. The flip side, though, we haven't seen Makhachev go a hard 5 rounds either. So that's a little bit of a concern too, is that what if Makhachev has 3 solid rounds in him and then in the 4th and 5th round starts to deteriorate? I'd kind of be surprised if Makhachev gets the finish here. I think Makhachev is going to grind this fight out. I think he'll win at least 4 rounds here. The striking is a little bit of a concern for me, because I do believe Moises could give him a little bit of trouble. And the only loss on Makhachev's record is a knockout loss to Adriano Martins. But I do think that we've seen Makhachev make the striking defense changes and improvements that's required to deal with the striking of his opponents that he's inevitably going to have to face, and that he's going to eventually have to nullify their power and their striking so that he can keep his grappling game going and impose his own game. So I am going Makhachev. Don't mind parlaying him. The decision prop is probably what I like most, around that plus 120 range, because I do think that that's the best way he wins this fight. But this should be a good way for us to go out there and get that barometer of what Islam Makhachev's 5-round gas tank looks like, and how it could translate to him for him once he starts fighting for the title or starts having more main event slots for himself. But I do think he goes out there and now grinds a very skilled Thiago Moises. Striking, like I said, going to be a bit of a concern, but I do think that Makhachev will survive that. And then once he gets that grappling going, I think that his top pressure is just tight and strong enough that Moises won't be able to get much off going off of his back. And I think he's going to struggle there. So I'm going Makhachev, and Makhachev via decision. All right, let's see what the chat is saying here. MMA Genius saying Islam by domination. George Menexopoulos is saying that I like the plus 150 on Makhachev inside the distance. He has 5 rounds to submit a guy who is going to be on his back for the majority of every round. I like the plus money here. To submit a guy like Thiago Moises is going to take a lot. Moises is a very good jiu-jitsu player. I'd say defensively, he's got to be just as good. Probably better defensively than he is offensively. Okay is saying Moises is too young. This is going to be the most important L of his career. I feel like he's had some very tough fights, even on the regional scene before coming to the UFC, and has shown some good things in those fights. This is the big thing here. Mbaye is saying Islam never fought 5 rounds before, and I agree. Liam Rowark is saying Makhachev by KO plus 350. Moises to survive 5 rounds is a big ask in my view. It could happen. Again, his defensive jiu-jitsu should be able to keep him out of too many bad spots, but I do like Makhachev by decision. Nigel Lee saying my grandmother came back and won a fight versus Ms. Johnson and Green was robbed. Not putting too much into those wins. I agree. And saying Islam just lays there. I disagree. He's shown some decent passing and top crushing work in his past couple fights. The Drew Dober fight, we definitely saw it. And saying, did Islam get a little tired in the Drew Dober fight? I don't think so. There was that one instance where Drew Dober was on top of him, I think, for like 10 seconds at the ending of the second round. I think that was more so Islam going for a submission attempt, which he did, and not getting the submission attempt, but knowing that there was a little bit of amount of time left on the clock, so he didn't mind risking it a little bit just to end up on bottom. John West saying unanimous decision plus 130 for Islam by points is minus 115. Do you see value there? Or minus 115? I think it's his best way to win the fight. I think he wins by decision more often than he wins by finish. I think Moises is tough, and I think his jiu-jitsu will keep him out of super danger. So yeah, unanimous decision is not a bad spot. Anthony C saying any chance we see a finisher? I think decision is more likely than the finish, to be honest. Okay, saying does Soriano win next week, bro? Quick thoughts. I think he's fighting Brendan Allen, right? I think he wins. I think he wins that fight. Here we go, Uncle Weezy with the stats. Islam only absorbs 0.77 significant strikes per minute, plus he has a 93.33 takedown defense rate, over 52% control time. He has been so dominant outside of the loss to Martins. Exactly. George Menexopoulos, Moises has very good BJJ, but the wrestling edge of Islam will get him to the better positions. Pretty confident he finishes Moises. Interesting. It would probably come via TKO, so that plus 350 is not too bad if that's what you like. Ben Peak, I like Makhachev by finish. Benil almost took out Thiago back control in the third round. I'm positive he has the ability to finish Thiago within 5. Don't mind it. Liam saying, where can I donate, bro? Appreciate your vids. Enjoy the breakdown. Great breakdown with Roddy. Appreciate you. There's either a super chat option in this video that you can do that, or the best way that I always try to get people on is the Patreon. The link is in the description. $5 a month, super cheap. Got a great Discord community. Got a bunch of other great things on there as well. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Uncle Weezy, there you go. He's talking about Soriano. All right, that's pretty much a wrap. That's the whole card right there for you guys. So for those joining on the back end here, I'll just quickly go over what my picks were. I like Nascimento, first round sub. I like Figueiredo, first round KO. I like Dos Santos, third round sub. I like Morozov, decision. I like Lemos, first round KO. I like Rodriguez, second round KO. I like Quarantillo, decision. I like Vieira, first round sub. I like Gamrot via decision. I like Tate via decision. And I like Islam Makhachev via decision. That's an 11 fight card for you guys. I believe it starts at 7 p.m. this weekend as well. So it's not an early start as some of them have been over the last couple weeks. All right. That's a wrap on my end. I'm going to be getting the pre-recorded version out for you guys very shortly, so you guys can watch that as well if you want. And yeah, that should be about it. Good luck on your bets this week. I'll see you guys throughout the week as I obviously have more content coming for you guys. Yeah, that's really about it. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow as well for the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. I haven't announced the guest yet. You know what? I might as well announce it to you guys. I haven't gotten the graphic up yet, but I have my guy Narco Cop coming on. I got my guy AMG Warrior Bet, very solid, very knowledgeable dude. And then I got my guy Rockstar Z, Z's MMA. I've been wanting to get him on for a long time, but now he's finally back and ready to go. So he's going to be on the show. So that's tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. All right. Good luck, guys. And good luck on your bets.